So the first concept that I really want to make sure everyone understands, and I'm going to really emphasize this point, spend some time with this material, learn this material, and try to break down this material into manageable chunks. What we have to understand with the foot and the ankle is we have to understand which motions are occurring in which plane. So start to kind of think about this schematic that you see on the board. Start thinking about axes. Think about the longitudinal axis. What motions are going to happen at that longitudinal axis? Think about the oblique axis. What motions are going to happen at the oblique axis? The other thing I really want you to understand is this rear foot motion that's happening. Now, as you can see, and we've drawn this one out before, when I have a talus, if this is my talus, my calcaneus sits under that bone, but it doesn't sit entirely under that bone. So what happens is this. When my foot hits the ground, and we're looking at a top-down approach here, okay? So I want to make sure we're all clear on how we're viewing our foot and our ankle here. So obviously what's happened is that my tibia and my fibula have been removed, and I'm simply looking at my talus and my calcaneus. So when we enter into the closed chain, so the easiest example of this is when I am striking my heel on the ground during the gait cycle. What we're going to see is the calcaneus is going to evert. It's going to go that direction. What my talus will then do, because remember we have this whole section kind of sitting out in the breeze, is it's going to adduct. So I want to make sure that you understand that, because as we start adding in the myology behind all this, we're going to notice that my, for example, triceps surae, okay, my gastrocnemius and my soleus complex, are going to not only plantar flex my calcaneus, or my ankle, if you will, but they're also going to have a very small role in inversion. And when we start to think about inversion, what we also need to start thinking about is controlling eversion. So when my triceps surae, remember my gastrocnemius and my soleus, when they contract eccentrically, that will control eversion. So I want to make sure that you really understand this concept. Also, what we're going to have to understand is how, when we're looking from the back to the front, how all this occurs as well. So what I want you to really think about here, and I'm going to switch slides here real fast. What I want you to think about is I want you to think about open chain and closed chain motion. Now again, go back to that slide of supination and pronation. What I want you to really think about here is what happens when I supinate and what happens when I pronate. So if this is my tibia, and that's going to be my fibula. So that means that over here is my lateral side, and over here is my medial side. Understand that we're going to have bones. This is obviously a very rudimentary drawing of this. Going to be my talus, and then underneath it's going to be my calcaneus. Now, when I'm in the open chain, meaning that here's the ground, and we have space between the ground and my foot. If I'm going to supinate, think about the motions that happen here. What happens is my calcaneus adducts, it inverts. My talus inverts as well. So understand that when we're dealing with the open chain, that's what we're going to see. Again, we're going to take this piece by piece by piece. Now, I'm going to clear the ink again, and we're going to start talking about what happens in the closed chain. The other point I want to make about open chain motion is what we're going to have to do is realize our tibia and our fibula are going to spin. They're going to rotate in the transverse plane as well. When I'm in the open chain, we're going to experience a lateral tibial rotation. So that's the open chain. Calcaneal inversion, talus, adducts, lateral tibial rotation. Now the closed chain. Big differences here. Here's my ground. Now what happens is that my tibia comes down, fibula comes down. Here's my talus and my calcaneus. Now what we have to think about here, and I want you to go back to that slide that we did back in the hip section of someone standing on one leg, and think about all the forces that are happening here. Understand and realize a couple different things. Understand that we're going to have body weight, going down. We're going to have ground reaction force coming up. That's the big thing to note here. Now what you're going to see is, if this is my axis, body weight, because this is my weight-bearing bone, my tibia, body weight's going to be on the medial side of the axis. Ground reaction force is going to be on the lateral side of the axis. What happens here is that this creates a pronation moment. Now what happens is that my calcaneus is going to evert my talus, because of this moment, is going to invert or adduct. And this is exactly why the talus will slide towards the medial side. Remember that talus is going to react to what's happening above it and below it. So I have this big force coming down from my tibia. Also, the calcaneus slides out of the way. There's only a couple places for the talus to go. The talus is going to slide medially. So I want to make sure you understand that concept. Now, obviously, we're going to have a lot of myology here. And we're going to see that myology is going to control that motion. Because remember your arches. We're going to have those medial and lateral longitudinal arches. We're also going to have that tarsal and metatarsal transverse arches. So understand where those arches are. Understand what's happening here from a biomechanical standpoint. So definitely spend some time with this particular concept. Pause the video, draw it out, make sure you understand it.